Welcome, neighbors, to Talkumentary, a show where we watch documentaries and then get together and talk about them.
Oh, hello there. Isn't it a beautiful day? It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood. A beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? It's a beautiful day for a neighbor. Could who in the neighbor for neighbor should? Won't you be my neighbor? My name is Mr. Kolaski, and this is episode 11 of Talkumentary. Welcome, everyone. Today, we have an all-male cast for this show. I am joined by Mr. Matt.
Hello.
King James.
Hey.
And DJ in the booth.
Yellow.
What's up, guys? We watched what? We watched Won't You Be My Neighbor?
Yeah.
Be my neighbor.
Be it.
Be my neighbor.
DJ was my neighbor for a long time. Did you know that?
Long time. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I know that now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then we were roommates.
Yep.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Anyway, what are we watching today? We are peeking into the life and career of a real one. A true, unscathed, seemingly pure superstar of the 70s, of the 80s, and into the 90s, who always had children's best interests in mind and lived his life in exactly the way his TV persona would have wanted. We're talking about the one and only Mr. Fred Rogers. We watched a 93-minute documentary called Won't You Be My Neighbor?
Won't you be my neighbor? It's an invitation to help somebody know that they're loved and capable of loving. Love is at the root of everything. Love or the lack of it.
Fred's work was love your neighbor and love yourself. It was a communication right into their hearts.
Children have very deep feelings, just the way everybody does. Please won't you be my neighbor?
Guys, what do you think about this one?
I think it was pretty good. I'd never watched it when I was a kid, and
No?
but I see the appeal, and it makes sense why it was so popular for that time.
Yeah, it was kind of one of those for me that it was always there. I knew what it was. I had seen it, but I don't remember being a fan of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood when I was a kid. It seemed kind of lame to me, if I'm being honest. I think, we'll get into this a little bit, but I think that some of the stuff that he talked about being like garbage TV was the stuff I really like to watch.
I love that stuff.
Yeah, the
garbage
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Transformers, the G.I. Joes, the Power Rangers, that kind of stuff. That was what I was into. But as an adult watching this documentary, I go, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
Right.
I get what he was
clicked.
going for. Yeah. James, Mr. Rogers, did he play any part of your childhood or life or anything like that?
I watched it as a child. It was fun. I like the trolley.
Yeah.
I like the make-believe world.
Yep.
And I like King.
Friday the 13th.
King Friday the 13th. What a name.
Yeah. So Won't You Be My Neighbor won a bunch of awards. It won the Golden Trailer Award for Best Documentary, Critics' Choice Documentary Awards for Best Director, Best Documentary, and Best Editing. It won a Gotham Audience Award. It was listed in the top 5 documentaries by the National Board of Review. It won Producers Guild of America Award for Outstanding Producer of a Documentary Theatrical Motion Picture. It won the Independent Spirit Award for Best Documentary Feature. This documentary was certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes with a 97% tomato meter with 259 reviews and an audience score of 94% with over 2,500 ratings. It was directed by Morgan Neville, produced by Morgan Neville, Karen Capotosto, and Nicholas Ma, who was Yo-Yo Ma's son, I believe. This film was a Tremolo Productions, Impact Partners, and Independent Lens production, distributed by Focus Features, and we streamed it on Netflix. All of that info will be in the show notes. If you haven't seen Won't You Be My Neighbor, go and check it out on Netflix. This is your spoiler alert. We are going to talk about what happens, but that's okay. You can join us on that if you want. Let's get into it. Let's talk about why we watched Won't You Be My Neighbor this week. I was the dealer for this documentary, and I will talk a little bit about why I chose it. I felt like, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought we needed something a little more lighthearted than what we've had recently. Would you agree with that?
I would agree.
Yeah, I would agree also.
It's good to change the tune every once in a while. And
Yeah.
this has a lot of history, this subject.
Yep. I felt like we needed something that was going to make us feel good. You know, I think we needed to know that, truthfully, I think we needed to know that someone loves us just the way we are.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty clear that we're loved just the way we are.
Right. Yeah. James, what did you think? Did you have any predictions so you said you hadn't seen this before. Did you, when I said, James, won't you be my neighbor?
Mm-hmm.
And you said,
I said, oh man, that's going to be great to watch.
yeah.
Want to be my neighbor. And then I like, wow, hold on. This guy, Mr. Roger, he had a lot more to say than, when I was a kid. When I was a kid, it was fun to watch, but I never realized what he was saying because I thought as a child.
Right.
But as an adult, he was ahead of his time.
For sure.
Oh, he was ahead of his time. I mean, in so many ways, and not just the relationship with children and how he appealed to them, but also crossing the racial divide,
Oh, yeah,
in
for
so many
sure.
ways.
Racial, social. I
Yep.
mean, he was tackling subjects that were, no one knew how to talk to their kids about.
And some said
And he was helping with that, which was awesome.
that was. And some was considered as taboo.
Absolutely. Yep.
Especially the one, of course, me being who I am, I'm going to pick up on the racial stuff, of course. No, I was just kidding. But on the real, when they washing their feet together,
Yep.
right after they kick a bunch of people out the pool because they're a different color and filling it with chemicals while they were in there just to get them out. I mean, what the heck?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah. And he said, nope,
Yeah.
we are inclusive.
Right.
Matt, did you have any predictions going into this?
So I thought that it would be more about him and less about his time in acting, but I guess that doesn't make sense because he was known for his acting and everything. So that was yeah. That's
one of the things that kind of surprised me, to speak on that, one of the few people in Hollywood, I guess, it's not the place necessarily, but the entertainment industry, I should say, that it didn't really seem like acting. It was more, this is who I am, and I'm putting myself on television because I believe television is a good, effective new medium at the time to reach children in a way that can really speak to them.
Yeah.
Right.
God, was he spot on, right?
Nailed it.
Became the overwhelmingly most popular way to interact with whole families.
Right.
Well, not just interact, but influence.
Influence, absolutely. Going into this, I kind of had my doubts. You hear rumors about the good guys in the entertainment industry. You hear rumors about, were they really as good as they appeared? And most of the time you find out, whether you're talking about the guy who had his, the Elmo puppet, who had, there was problematic things with him, even Bob Ross and people that are supposedly like good people. And it comes out with these scandals, America's, family with the Cosby Show, and now Cosby's one of the canceled figures in most hated people, or whatever you want to say, where I never would have thought
Subway guy too.
Subway guy, yeah, all this stuff where the good guy turns out to be not so good. So I was a little concerned going into this, like, do we have one left?
Yeah.
Do we have one? And
It was confirmed.
It was confirmed, at least from what I could tell.
Yeah.
Same here.
I had my doubts, though. I was going, please, when I was watching this, please don't come out that he was accused of fondling a little kid or having a torture dungeon or some shit like that. And thankfully, that didn't happen.
It never happened.
Yeah.
No.
So let's get into some of our least favorite details about Won't You Be My Neighbor. But real quick, this is about as painless of a synopsis as we can get. This film examines the life and legacy of Fred Rogers, the beloved host of the popular children's television program Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. It highlights some of the struggles that he and the crew went through, as well as the fun they had along the way. It pointed out Fred's overall goals and the purpose of the show, as well as letting us see some of the doubts that he may have had. Overall, it showed us that Fred Rogers really was the inclusive, kind, caring, gentle, genuine person that he portrayed on TV. Matt, what was your standout moment? Like, and we'll get into some of the details, but what was something that when you think about this documentary, the first thing that comes to your mind?
The standout moment was, when the gentleman that I can't remember his name, but he was the cop in there, and he turns out he came out as gay.
Officer Clemens.
Yeah, Officer Clemens. Yep. And he came out as gay, and Fred Rogers had told him that he couldn't do that. He couldn't come out as that. That wouldn't be good for the show. And so that was really my standout moment. But eventually he warmed up to the idea and I was accepting.
Right. And I thought it was really cool how he told him. Yeah. By, what was it? Telling everyone I love you just the way you are. Mm-hmm. And eventually Officer Clemens was like, Fred, were you talking to me? And he said, Clemens, I've been talking to you this whole time. Mm-hmm. Right. Yes, you, for who you are. You're a gay black man who at the time that was a
taboo.
Yeah, taboo or shunned or didn't maybe feel a lot of love from the straight white community. And he's going, no. You're still my dude, Yep. And that, and we'll find out toward the end of the doc, that did do some damage to Fred Rogers' quote unquote reputation, if you want to call it damage. People shunned him for those beliefs. Even at his funeral, they were, God hates, homosexuals signs and things like that. I can't even use the slur in that, but that's difficult for me. Anyway, to kind of even this out or bring it back a little bit to the lightheartedness, I couldn't help but think when I was watching this documentary that if Fred Rogers were to be in today's world in exactly the same way that he was in the 1960s, it would have been really difficult to not be totally creeped out by this guy.
Yeah,
because of the way that he was. How he kind of just talked to the kids and I want, I want to tell you all I love you no matter just how you are. Now, yeah, that's wonderful. And you want your kids to be loved by, and you want, that's good. And truthfully, if you think about things like the guy from Blue's Clues or the Wiggles and things like that, yeah, in a different scenario, you may be creeped out by them. All in all, the hope is that it is genuine because you want there to be other influences in your child's life that are good. And when you're putting it out there that you want kids to like you and to want to be around you, you're hoping that that person is upstanding and means what they say.
Do you think if he were around today that his message would be as well received as it did?
No way in my mind. We are too saturated with all the noise now. Yep. And what he was talking about, the things that he was talking,
he warned us about all that.
He did.
Too.
If Fred Rogers was alive today, he would hate media today.
Yes, he would.
And, I just can't, I don't see something as innocent and pure as what he was doing being at all as successful today. Now, I've never had little kids, so maybe those of you that have
not in today's society
to that, but
not in today's society. Yeah, people are too eager to find the negative in people, and people that are like Mr. Rogers, that just wouldn't be well accepted in today's society.
He'll get ate up in today's society.
You think what? Why? For what?
Just for, like you said, how he sounds. It would be more of an attack on character on this guy.
And the irony is, his message is that he loves you for who you are.
Yeah, right. True.
And that's where humans should be today, but clearly that is not the case.
Yeah.
And his messages were, the things he talked about, like assassination and everything, and bring it to life to where a kid can understand. He knew the mind of a child, and he delivered it perfectly.
Well, it was the idea of giving a make-believe, quote unquote, place that kids could see the current confusing world around them, and he could use puppets and imagination and things like that to explain those things. And then, so all this stuff happens in the make-believe neighborhood with all the puppets and the actors, and then then the trolley goes back into the real world with Mr. Rogers, who is your friend, who has established himself as a safe, loving, caring person, and he can say, wasn't it interesting how King Friday, this, that, and the other, we need to learn to love each other. Well, that's a message. That's something happening in the world that they can understand. And then someone you trust explaining it to you in a way that you can get.
Right.
It's an interesting note to think about too, is he never appeared in that make-believe world that he had created.
Right.
You know, because I mean, he produced and created this entire thing, both realities.
He was doing the puppets. He was the voice of every single puppet that was there. I think I'll go next. My kind of one of the major standouts for me was I was a big fan of the fact that when Fred Rogers decided so I didn't realize that he was a minister.
Right.
I didn't realize that he was a faith-based person that wanted to teach ministry or bring that to children. He was focused on children. But you would have never known that he was doing that was never his mission, I guess, was never to say God loves you for the way. His mission was to say, no, let's love each other. I'm going to teach the love of the Jesus that I believe in and the things that I believe. I'm going to teach that in a way that doesn't push away, just because I can't imagine that it would have been quite as popular if it was touted as today's Bible show that, we go into the Bible. It would have had a following, but maybe not to the extent and reached as many people as it would have. And that was how he decided to preach, so to speak, without shoving it down anyone's throat. It was love. We talked about it in the Overnighters when we talked last week, and love thy neighbor, right? Nobody loved thy neighbor more than Mr. Rogers portrayed on his show and encouraged kids to do. Another thing let's go. James, what stood out to you, sir? I think I kind of skipped over you a little bit.
Washing of the feet.
Okay.
And you had a
Talk
guy
to me about that.
Well, they played a scene where a bunch of colored people were in the pool swimming where they wasn't supposed to be by society thoughts, and the guy was just pouring chemicals into
that was
pool
crazy.
with them. Yeah, his body was there, and at that time, race and stuff was separated, and it was kind of high. And then here comes this guy, black guy. He's already like a police officer or somebody with authority that wouldn't be being black, wouldn't be authority. That's one thing he did, and the second thing he did was he shared his pool. His pool. We're going to say, since he's like a minister, we'll say they share flesh together in a pool. Flesh,
Yeah.
But they wash together. So, that showed that anybody can be your neighbor. Or anybody can be your friend, no matter who it is.
Well, and to think about how big of a risk that was for him and his show at the time, and how controversial that could have been to do something like that. First of all, it was a huge risk to have Clemens stand in as the police officer, as the voice of authority on his show, because he was a black man. And even Clemens talked about it in the doc that, I was taken aback by the fact that he wanted me in this position. The only position, of authority in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood was played by a black man. And Rogers did that on purpose. He wanted to say nobody is below anyone else.
Right, exactly.
And I could still have a relationship with this person. And then as soon as the segregation in our country reached kind of an all-time, or maybe not an all-time, but there was things in the news and the media was about the segregation in the pool. like you said, the first thing he did when that happened was, tomorrow we're having a kiddie pool where Clemens is putting his feet in there, and we're going to show that no, that's not right. Because in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, we're inclusive.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you're a little red-nosed puppet, if you're a black police officer, if you're, the postman that comes every morning, whatever, we're all wanted here. Doesn't matter at all about who you are.
One other thing that was appealing for him his audience was when they, recreated situations in society,
Right.
And they helped explain, what the emotions behind those feelings that they created, and that was something I didn't realize that they did. But he did.
They were in like the Soviet scares and things, and they kind of turned King Friday the 13th into sort of a dictator that didn't want to change. And they just sort of made it simple enough so that a kid could understand it. And then explained how that can be damaging, but also explain why those things might be happening in just a way that kids could understand. And at the time when there wasn't quite as much in the world of animation and things like that, it was getting there. But, later in the show, it was there, with cartoons and whatnot. But at that time when TV was first a thing, I mean, puppets were huge for kids. It was the animation of the time.
Yeah. Right.
And, he capitalized on that. And then he kept doing it through the 70s, 80s, and 90s, the same kind of feel, which every show, and he did 1,700 shows or something like that. I've got that in my notes here somewhere, but every one of them, he walked in, he changed his coat or his jacket to his sweater. He changed his shoes into more comfortable shoes. And he talked about, I wanted to create a place like, look, we're home, we're safe, we're comfortable. Let's sit down. Let's have these conversations. Let's talk about what's going on. Let's talk about what's probably going on inside these kids' heads. And let's explain it in a way as a tool to help parents probably explain these things. Because you watch on the news that someone just got assassinated, and that news is going to reach your kids' ears. So to be able to go back and say, well, look at how King Friday the 13th and Henrietta Pussycat dealt with this situation. And that's a really good way to talk to your kids. And he's doing some of that work with you, I think was his hope, was with the parents, not to be the parent, but to be, at least that's the way I took it.
And then he turned around and showed solutions also.
Yeah.
So, this is how the peace, and give out peace, give love, be this way, be that way, and that was a great thing too.
That was his power of influence. That's what he was a master of. And that's what was so appealing, is because his message was positive, and that's why it lived on for decades.
Right.
And still does.
Yeah. And I think that, in my mind, the repetition of every show starting the same, for that many years. And when you're a kid, and especially if you're struggling with anything, sometimes, change is scary, whether there's something going on with your family, with your friends and all that, but that Mr. Rogers is going to come. There's a little slice that he was able to give them through a television show where it was going to be the same every time. And you knew he was going to change his sweater, he was going to change his shoes, and then he was going to tell you that you were cared about. And he even said, I'm speaking to one person, not one person specifically, but I'm speaking to the one person on the other side of that screen that, he's called it hallowed ground, the area between the person and that screen. And I thought that was kind of profound, in the way that he thought about using his medium, which I think a lot of people are lost on that. They get caught up in how many people are watching this, how many, how much content am I creating, how loud and impactful is, and how many, how can I get people to pay attention to it? Where he's going, if I'm connecting with one person, if I'm getting to one child and helping them get through this thing, then what I've done has been worth it.
Right.
That's huge.
Oh yeah.
That's huge.
Big.
So on the other side of that, Mr. Rogers had a family, not just the kids that he influenced. He had a family. So they did talk about that a little bit. They talked about, my dad was essentially, what did they say? The next best thing since, Christ, or, like it was, and it's like that had, what do you guys think? If your dad was Mr. Rogers, is that a good thing? Is that a pleasant childhood?
Well, you probably didn't have any problem getting friends. I mean, especially when you were young.
Yeah, maybe.
Because, I mean, you look at the way those kids were talking to him. I mean, they idolized him.
Right.
I think it would have been real good. If he was my dad, I would have been the happiest guy in the world. Have little things down, play with you. You got your mindset. You guys can go to the child world together and still just be happy and knowing that this man is going to protect you and keep you safe. So, yeah, it would have been a good day.
I kind of veer towards the other side of what you guys were saying, because if he truly was as passionate about and as I guess I don't want to use the word obsessed, but obsessed with his program, and that, are you in the shadow of something? Are you kind of being left behind? Are you getting as much attention as the kids around the world that aren't sitting in his living room? I can't help but think about that, because I know I've heard story, and I can't put my finger on any of them right now, but I've heard stories about, the celebrity kids, even though your parent is portraying this, picture of perfection as a parent and as a guide for children, are you being left behind at all? Is there jealousy? I can't imagine that there's not, because, I know that even the children of like teachers and stuff can get jealous of the students because they're taking the parents' time. I wanted my dad. I didn't want Mr. Rogers, and so my fear would be that. And I also have to say that I would have absolutely hated if my dad used that damn puppet voice at the dinner table to talk about, to get points across. He said, one of the sons said something about, we would know when dad was saying something that Mr. Rogers may not have said, or in a way that Mr. Rogers, because he would change his voice to the puppet that was kind of the witch. And when he talked like that, we knew he was being serious. Do you know how angry it would have made me if one of my parents brought out a damn puppet voice when they were mad? Like, oh, that would be so annoying. Like, get over it. Anyway.
Did they say that did they interview the kids?
Yeah. Two of the kids were, I think he only had two boys.
Did they say anything about that being annoying, or?
Yeah, well, they kind of alluded to it. It more seemed like, and you guys that watched it, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed more like an eye roll. Like it was, they didn't really go, God, I couldn't stand it. But they were kind of just like, we knew when dad was on one because he talked like Elaine Fairchilde. And we knew that he was saying something that Mr. Rogers wouldn't be able to say.
Yep.
Wouldn't that be kind of nice that your dad said something like a puppet instead of just going off yelling and all this?
No,
stuff,
I definitely see where you're coming from with that. Especially compared to, as opposed to being a total tyrant or something, it'd be better than that. But I can imagine if you're, as a kid, that's probably kind of annoying. Anything your parents do, parents are notorious for being corny to their kids. So, I can see that just being a little bit.
Yeah, the hope would be that he acted like that before he started the show. So it was like a norm for the kids.
Right.
Like, oh yeah, dad created these characters and then he used them on the show. So there wasn't really that much of a divide between what he was like in real life and what was on the show, which would, show his, how good his character was or how his relationship was, because it would be hard as a dad to get the attention from all these other kids, but then also give your own kids attention.
Yep. Absolutely.
Because you're hearing your own kids cry and scream, and
the other kids are just adoring you.
Yeah, they're just like, you're the best. And the kids are at home telling you no.
Right. Yep. I could see that. But I'm glad you asked about that, because they did say that it was pretty clear that his puppets were based on people in his life. Queen Sarah was very much so, whether they admitted it or not, their mother, the kid's mother, Mr. Rogers' wife. And kind of a funny part was when the kid said no one really wanted to admit it, but Lady Elaine Fairchilde, who was kind of the witch, was definitely Mr. Rogers' sister, and they had her on there, and she's like, "Yep, I'm pretty sure that was based off of me." Because because she was kind of anything. She was the antagonist, even though she had heart. She wasn't a bad guy, but anything that was like controversial that happened usually came from either her or King Friday the 13th.
Did Friday the 13th did he name this before like?
That's a good question.
The horror movies came out.
Oh, I would.
That's a very good question.
I would imagine.
Did they come up with the names because of his thing?
Oh, the Friday Jason Voorhees that came out in early 80s, I think.
Yeah, that could be. I don't. So yeah, they probably named the Friday the 13th movies after King Friday the 13th. Probably trying to take a little jab at this is this is childish and this whatever, but now it's horror. So the puppets. Let's talk about the puppets a little bit. The most well known and the one that has probably lived the longest through the animated series that came after Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and all that is Daniel Striped Tiger. He was the shy, gentle tiger, equal parts timid and brave, and he was the longest running puppet as well. They talked about that this was Mr. Rogers. This character was Mr. Rogers. The child, Mr. Rogers, he was able to tap into his child self and talk through that puppet, which was pretty neat, actually. Seeing one of the very first episodes before it was called Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, it was called like Children's Corner or something like that. And they had a break in the programming, and he like punched his hand through the clock with the paper clock with Daniel Striped Tiger and was talking, and then it just clicked. And then from then on, Daniel Tiger was associated with the clock, and it just kind of carried on. I thought that was pretty cool. Like I said, I like to say I acquired 2 children after they had already gone through their really young phases. So I was never involved in Daniel Tiger, the animated piece. Any of you guys?
No.
Yes, constantly.
Yeah, both my kids, they watch Daniel Tiger.
Yeah,
it wasn't until recently that I made the connection that they were connected. I didn't. I wasn't.
What's that show about? What's the
I mean, the same thing.
The same thing, same concept. Yeah,
but they don't go into as deep of stuff like he did, which is kind of unfortunate. If it's supposed to be like his legacy, he lives on in this little character.
Yeah.
But they go through some, normal things that kids think about or have to learn, like learning how to go to the bathroom or
so it's
like not making fun of each other in class or being nice to each other. Yeah. There's little songs and all that. So
it's maybe more toward the everyday life of a kid and not so much like current events and how to handle emotions and things.
Definitely.
Okay. Yep. I thought it was really brave of Mr. Rogers to want to tackle those things. That was the first thing that he would do when he saw something on the news was, how do I create this in the land of make-believe so that I could, which would be nice if there was something, and maybe there is, but it just doesn't look like it does now.
Not as popular, probably.
Yeah, and not as popular because it's not as oversaturated, or it wasn't as oversaturated back then as it may be now.
And that was the nice thing about how he produced his shows back then. It was semi-live, more current, whereas like the animated Daniel Tiger, they have to animate it, come up with the scripts, do all the work. Where, it would be probably a long time before they got to the current event.
Yeah.
He could just address that right away because the set's already there.
Yep.
He could change something on the fly.
Is it live? Was the original Mr. Rogers live TV? Or was it pre-recorded?
No, I don't think it was live. I think he had a couple of shows that were, but I don't think he actually had like most of them or anything.
I couldn't remember. I'm pretty sure that when they did the like Children's Corner thing, I think it was because I think that's when he talked about having to fill space when something went wrong. and that's where Daniel Tiger came from.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, okay, so some of the other puppets, of course, we spoke about King Friday the 13th. He was the ruler of the neighborhood of make-believe. He can be demanding, but he cares deeply for his subjects and for Queen Sarah. There was the mischievous and a bit of a troublemaker Lady Elaine Fairchilde. She is also a brave, sassy, and always ready to speak up. She was a super ugly puppet. I don't know if you guys remember.
Kind of weird.
That nose was something else.
Yeah, the nose. The nose was insane. They were all kind of weird looking, but.
No, just kidding.
Then there was Henrietta Pussycat, a lovable cat, meow, that dressed up, meow, meow, in fancy dresses and meow hats, who put meow into everything. And then, of course, X, the owl, a fun-loving, easygoing, relaxed sort of owl who loves to learn. X, the owl is a pretty cool name. I don't know.
I can get with that.
Yeah.
He kind of reminds me a little bit of myself, but
X the owl?
no, it would have been a tiger owl, but
Oh, you were Henrietta Meow Pussycat.
Is that what it was?
Yeah. Meow.
I can't even get that.
Meow.
No, I can't even get that.
Meow.
Gotta have a man. Meow, meow,
Bro.
meow. It's probably scary kids.
Well, who's your favorite puppet, Matt?
I didn't have one.
Come on.
I don't care for puppets.
Why?
Puppets are stupid.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Puppets are stupid.
All right.
This just wasn't my generation. It was something. It was something I never connected with.
Yeah.
I grew up with animation, and that was what was appealing to people my age. And
if I talk to you in this little puppet,
yeah, now you're just creeping me out, which is why Mr. Rogers would have never survived in this day and age.
but I can talk to you about things as a puppet that I wouldn't be able to talk to you about, man.
Yeah, you've convinced me. You're right. Let's talk about it.
Like, what happened to my butt? Oh, it's my arm. No, I'm just kidding.
What the hell?
It was a comedy skit that I seen a long time ago. That's why I threw it in there. But I like the tiger.
Daniel Tiger.
It went through transformation because at first it had like one eye was a button and the other eye was something else. And I looked, I said, this thing look all tattered up and stuff. And he still, hi. Like,
yeah.
oh God, he creeping me out there, And all of a sudden he's like perfect.
Can I just say that I was a little bit like the germ spreading of that puppet with how many kids kissed and hugged that thing.
Oh man!
I mean, those black and white footage where he's like,
"Hi, kids, give me a little hug and a kiss,"
and they're all these kids. I'm going, that wouldn't happen today. Even before COVID, I think we would have been grossed out by that. But then of course, post pandemic, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I loved that there was a allowance for silence.
Oh yeah.
That's so incredible.
Yeah, that was great.
Because I love silence, and I immediately when they talked about that, silence is so important.
So, what Fred was able to do is he would work on things. DJ's shaking his head because he hates the dead noise, but he would do things. He would work on things. He would have, I'm trying to remember, there was a scene where he was like building a puzzle or something like that. But he wasn't talking. There was no music playing or anything. Mm-hmm. And one of the talking heads in the doc said, there was a lot of slow space, but there was no wasted space. Which Fred was really Fred. He and I are on first name basis now. Mr. Fred Rogers, minister, his big thing was it's okay to be quiet, to slow down. Yeah. Let's slow down this fast-paced, insanely saturated and loud world and give you an opportunity to just sit and promote being quiet. Now, I related to that quite a bit. When they're showing the clips of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and G.I. Joes and all this stuff, I'm going, yeah, hell yeah, that's the stuff that I watched when I was a kid. But I did see that and go, it really was a obnoxious, loud, crazy, overstimulating thing. It's no wonder kids, especially now versus then, but even then, had trouble focusing. When that's the what's being put in front of you. And he had a real problem with that. So he gave kids a space to say, hey, this is what we're doing. We're being quiet.
which is a good thing. You might think about it as I thought about when you tell kids they're acting up and they're clowning, being loud and rowdy and whatever. First thing, you got to time out.
Oh,
You need to go sit down and be quiet and relax and gather your thoughts. The same process I think is going on right here, where to be quiet, and even the Bible says it's good to be silent.
Yeah.
So I just love that part too. Also, I like even though I talk a lot, I do love silence.
Yeah. It feels good.
Yeah.
And he did it so right too. I mean, to gain the attention and keep the attention of children and know exactly when to use that moment of silence as a means of reflection. I mean, that's what he was so good at, and
for sure.
And he was able to keep doing that because it was effective, and parents saw it too.
Yeah. Yeah, they did. And I can imagine, as a parent, I said I didn't have young girls, but I was around when my nephew was young, and I remember him having shows on and things that were just so crazy. And imagining Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood in the living room would probably almost be like a sigh of relief, like finally a show that he doesn't come in there screaming, he doesn't come in there, just blasting, and he's just going. He comes in there first and just says, "Here I am. And I love you, James, King James. I love you just the way you are."
It's all Southern.
Yeah, I don't know why.
I don't know what that was, but
we all love James. Just the way he
it's
is.
true.
Well, it's funny because in like TVs and movies, they talk about how when actors do like a 3-second pause or something, how amazing it is that it keeps your attention because it doesn't happen very much. They try not to have any dead air for the most part in radio and podcasts, whatever it is something has to be happening,
right?
And it's so people are just amazed when an actor he did a stare for 3 whole seconds.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yep.
Where Mr. Rogers is sitting here doing it.
Yep.
Every episode, constantly.
Yep.
And people still love the content because of what it is.
It's because he was so genuine, and it was pretty easy to tell that his goal was to have a positive effect on kids, and that was the mentality he wanted to instill in children was be calm, think of it from a calm perspective, and you'll be enlightened.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And ultimately, to the other big thing that carried on for generations that he took to every one of his commencement speeches when he did colleges was, you are special just the way that you are.
Right.
That was his, in my opinion, after the little bit that I watched the show growing up, but after watching this documentary, you are special. No matter where you are, no matter who you are special just the way you are, and you are loved. You're unique, but you're also, accepted.
Right.
And you're special just the way you are. Now, talk to me about what you guys thought when the documentary started discussing the accusations that Fred Rogers created a generation of kids who felt like they didn't need to work and they were automatically made special.
And they were entitled.
Yes.
What
are your thoughts?
My thought was that was just stupid. They didn't even need to put that part even in there.
Well,
I think it's fun. I think it's good to see that.
It's a legitimate idea to think that could create the mentality that people think they're entitled to things, that everybody is special, and in one way or another, in reality, everybody is special in their own way.
I guess if you look at it like that, it sounds good, but still, it just sounded like, to me, they just could have left it out because, he's telling people to love each other. He's telling people to care about each other.
Yeah, most people that hear that message don't believe that. But there's, like I said, there's always those few people that are just looking to.
You think this would have been good in the 60s then? Well, when they had like peace, love, and stuff like that, you could chill out, come up Muppet and stuff. Hey, bro, what's up?
Which is probably why people were getting mad, because that was like the sign against authority,
right?
The hardworking American, that founded the country.
You had to work hard every day of your life and earn the things. And what they spoke about on the doc, and what I feel is, you're not necessarily having to not earn the things or you're not having to work for things. It's just understand that it doesn't matter who you are. You still are valued. You're a valued member of society, whether you've done literally anything or not. And to me, that's not a bad thing. I don't, to me, that is, something that we should be telling kids. And I think too, that part of his mission was to tell the kids that maybe don't get told that very often. Yep. I was blessed to be raised in a family that I did get told that I was loved, and I did get shown that I was valued, but not everyone was raised that way. And his thing was, if I can use my platform, so to speak, to reach these kids, then that's what I want to do.
Right.
And he was a rich kid growing up, they did say.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, that living in that world.
Didn't know how to use a screwdriver.
Yeah.
And that brings us to kind of the thought that someone so pure, as pure as a TV personality and as a human being can be. I'm not going to say outright that, hey, this guy never did a thing wrong in his life, because I'm sure he did. I mean, he's a human being, but as pure as you can hope someone to be, probably, when you're a personality like that, a celebrity, people are going to try to look for, how do we bring him down a notch?
Yep.
Right.
How do we find him? So they're going to do things like saying he ruined a generation, or he loves the homosexuals and we hate him for that. Or he was actually a Navy SEAL who killed thousands of people, and he's, covered in tattoos because whatever. I mean, what a degenerate that gets himself covered in tattoos, right?
Yeah.
But that was all false.
All false.
They talked about, like, that's when they mentioned he's a rich kid who doesn't know how to use a screwdriver, let alone kill somebody. It's just people who weren't willing to believe that he was who he said he was, or who he portrayed.
Then they turn around. You see what they did, the interview with him with the news reporter. I believe that was, to ask him. I have to ask you. I just have to ask you. He couldn't get it all out, but they finally just said, "Are you gay?"
Oh yeah.
I'm like, wow. I want this. They didn't show his response.
Yeah.
I want to hear his response.
Right.
But even the gay guy was like, "Hey, I'm gay."
I would have known.
And I would have known if he was gay,
Yeah.
And he wasn't.
He is not. He's just a man that was not afraid to
be sensitive.
To be sensitive and take some of the toxicity out of masculinity.
Right.
And that's what Clemens had talked about. Like, this was the first time that a grown man told me that he loved me.
Right.
And to be able to do that in a time where that was so kind of, I don't want to say frowned upon, but you could be looked at and questioned of your sexuality. Thankfully, that's a little better now. I tell you guys I love you and whatever, and that doesn't strike people as off-putting as maybe
as fruity, being fruity, yeah.
Right. And Jesus, James, sorry. And but he wasn't afraid to do that, which I think was super progressive for him, especially being a white man who was a believer in it was a religious man.
Yeah.
Right. That was unheard of in some ways back then, which in my opinion, that should have been the outlook of Christianity and religion forever. I mean, we should be accepting and, secure enough in our beliefs and our whatever that we're okay with that. But it's not how it's always turned out. And we know some of the history on that. One thing I want to touch on real quick, I did really enjoy when Rogers went before Congress.
Oh, yes.
When he went before Senator John Pastor, who was vocally against the funding of public broadcast television. That was during the time of the war, and they were trying to raise funds for it. And this guy was vocally going, I don't want to hear anyone else read anything. I'm tired of hearing all your stupid excuses of why you think you should get money. Someone bring me a real reason why we should continue funding whatever. And Rogers got up there and he won him over.
Right.
I mean, plain and simple, the way he spoke to kids, he spoke to this guy.
Exactly.
He said, basically, I'm not going to read this to you, but you have told me that you're going to read what we've brought. So I'm going to trust you as one gentleman to another that you're going to do what you said you're going to do, and you're going to read this document that I brought. But for today, what I'm going to tell you is that this is how I want to reach kids, and this is what's happening. And the best way for me to tell you what I do is to tell you the words of a song that we sing. And he sang the song. I don't have it all, but what do you do with the mad you feel when you feel so mad you could bite? And that was the concept that he said in such a simple way and so calm and so relaxed. And Senator Pastore, straight up, immediately after, he says,
"Looks like you got the money.
Looks like you got the $20 million."
Right. And that put him on board. That put Rogers on board right off the bat.
Yeah, he skyrocketed in popularity after that because he has saved public television in many ways.
And being straightforward, straight true, no holds bar in a lighthearted way.
Right. And respectful.
Yep, very respectful.
And gentle. But he was the only one to get through to this guy who was up there basically with his chest puffed out. And the guy said, "You did it. Nice work."
Right. Real recognize real.
Yeah, essentially. Exactly. Which I thought was a really fun thing. And you could kind of see Roger's smirk after that, where he was trying not to be like, "I'm the man, like I got this." But he was kind of like, all I've asked for is for people to listen to the message that I'm trying to give.
Right.
This man listened, and we got what we needed to continue this mission, which I thought was really pretty powerful.
I did too. I could say that was another one of the highlights in that.
For sure. All right. So in the year 2000, the show finally ended. The last show was in, I believe, February of 2000. So that was a pretty good run for a show. They did say that Fred got a little depressed after the show ended. His wife, I believe, quoted him as saying that he missed his playmates, which, it's a long time to be doing a show and to have the same kind of programming and then all of a sudden don't do it. I mean, I get it's sad. Probably, it is sad. And
he lived his life through his work.
For sure.
So when he missed that, his life kind of just went down a little bit on that. I can understand that.
Yeah. And they did say that Fred was one of the adults that never lost sight of what it felt like to be a kid. He never completely allowed himself to, I don't want to say grow up, because he obviously was. He was a successful businessman and a producer and all that. So it's not that he wasn't growing up, but he never lost touch with that. And to me, that felt like him going, well, he still kind of is a kid at heart. So when all of a sudden after, 30 some years of doing the show, 40 years of doing the show, all of a sudden you're not going to play with your friends anymore. Like, that's sad, man.
Yep.
Well, yeah, think of how sad our lives are. We're all adults and we don't get to hang out with our friends in the street
until we come and do this. That's why we do this, right? So we can hang out with our friends. Stuff. Yeah. And we just have to do it in on the internet.
Yeah, exactly.
So he did come back and do some things, like he did a promo for after the 9/11 tragedies. Besides that, his career was basically over. And he died in 2003, shortly after the 9/11 promos he did. I did think it was pretty powerful. I don't remember seeing those promos when 9/11 was going down.
No, I don't remember.
But I could see why he would want to come out of the woodwork and say, I need to talk to my children again. My children are the ones who are adults now dealing with this stuff. And I feel like maybe I could have an impact on how they're processing this.
Right.
That's huge.
Yeah,
it is.
For somebody, that's like all of a sudden your grandpa coming back into the room and going, I'm still here. Don't forget that I'm still here. That,
I didn't even mention that by him even doing that, we that used to watch him, and he coming back now, we being adults now, feeling at ease. Mr. Rogers talking to us,
Yeah.
And I mean, it sounds, but
you're absolutely right.
It's a cool cat.
Yep.
How old was he when he died?
70 something, I think.
I think so.
Yeah. I think what they said.
Wasn't even that old, was it?
No.
cancer or anything?
They said he had stomach issues.
Yeah.
They didn't really go into whether it was cancer or not. I'm sure we could Google that and figure it out. But
almost feels like one of those situations where like your wife passes away or your husband passes away or whatever, and then you pass away shortly after.
Yeah,
just
his show goes
like
down.
Loneliness, like he loses his purpose kind of, or like his kids or his life. And then just like kind of gives up emotionally and mentally.
And kind of to go back to what we were talking about before, that has to feel a little weird for your actual wife and kids.
Yeah.
When, almost immediately after his show ends, he dies. Like, it's kind of like, come on, did we mean nothing to you this whole time?
Right.
And I'm sure, I can't speak to what they were, but I will say when we were watching them, when they did interview the kids, they didn't, maybe it was me and you guys speak to this, but did it feel a little bit like they weren't as stoked on their dad as the rest of the world was? Or was it just...
Well, yeah, I think maybe it would be easy to feel that way just because they saw it every day.
Right.
I mean, they were there for so much of it. I mean, if you could recognize his kids from when he was doing his shows, I bet you could go back and look at the camera footage and they'd be right there with them.
Yeah. So how did you feel? Credits roll. What are you feeling, Matt?
I mean, I was kind of sad. I didn't get to feel that joy that those kids had, when they were young, and everything when I was young was everything was stimulation, as far as mental stimulation. But it was so simplistic back then. It seems like just because technology and videography wasn't as extensive as it is now. But I was sad that I didn't get to experience that firsthand, and I think I would have maybe enjoyed that.
Yeah. Some of the less stimulating programming. You think that would have been...
I think that would have been right up my wheelhouse because, being an adult now and realizing the things that trigger me, mentally and intellectually, I like those quiet times. I like silence,
sure.
Those times of reflection. Those are important to me now as an adult, but I could definitely see the appeal.
Yeah.
Right.
James.
I was sad that the guy passed away because how good he was, and they didn't find no guile in his living, But I was a little bit upset too because people, not every people, but the way they was just calling him with all like gay this, gay that, just trying to demean him at his death.
Yeah. At his funeral.
I mean,
I couldn't believe that.
I'm like, what are you doing? I mean, who are these people? Give me some names and addresses right quick.
Right. How are you not walking outside that funeral and being absolutely furious?
Right.
Like, guys, really? So if maybe you're listening to this and you didn't watch the documentary, outside of his funeral, and I kind of alluded to earlier, there was an anti-gay picket line where they were holding up a bunch of slurs on signs and basically protesting the funeral of Fred Rogers because they thought he was a sympathizer to the gay community, which he was because he was accepting. But to go to that man's funeral around his loved ones and the community who cherished him in his acceptance, to just bash him like that is just next level low for,
a lot of Karens out there, a lot of Karens. That's what I'm saying.
Them protesting like that just goes to show how much we need more of people like him.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I was thinking, like, how many people can you name that are as popular and have the same characteristics or like programming style or anything,
or the same reach,
just that's calm and friendly and loving?
Can we think of any collectively?
Because I can't think of any actor today that would come close to him.
No, I can't think of any shows.
Maybe there was the closest they get is like the dude from Blue's Clues or something. Which, when he popped back up to tell everyone during COVID, we're all still together. That was moving.
Yep.
But even that didn't reach the same.
Walken.
Christopher Walken. Okay. But yeah, I don't know that we have a lot.
He was always genuine, the same. It's crazy that we can't have that or even accept it as shows.
Yeah,
or
and
like something our kids can
because
watch.
it won't be flashy enough.
Yeah.
It won't do well.
Because they even had to change his show to the cartoon, and it's flashy and songs, and there's not all those pauses and calm.
How do you think Fred Rogers would feel about Daniel Tiger now?
I don't know. I mean,
I think it's overplayed. I think he would think it's overplayed now, and I don't think it's not the same. But I mean, I think he would agree
He'd appreciate it probably.
I think he would appreciate it, but I think he would see the difference in how it has evolved from his message of silence and think about this.
Right.
He might just accept it,
I don't know, because when they talked about who he was as a producer and all that, he wouldn't even let people ad lib and go off script because he was so particular about the direction and the message that he wanted to come across. There was a part, maybe the only, I don't want to say darkness, but the only time where they ever talked about anything that was somewhat not perfect, quote unquote, of Mr. Rogers was that as the years went on, he became less like Daniel Tiger and more like King Friday the 13th is what they were saying, because he was becoming real particular with how he wanted things and real strict about how he wanted those and the message to be told. There was one part that I actually got a little creeped out by him because he got upset. And in one of the shots, he said, "I'm tired of hearing people who have long ago set aside the concerns of childhood and telling everyone what children really need." And he looked right into the camera and his eyes were real wide. And he said, "I'll tell you what children need." And I get it. I mean, he was probably frustrated with the world and the media. And I'm not blaming the man for that, but that makes me wonder, if that's the worst that he did, good on you, Fred.
Right.
But also, would he have liked Daniel Tiger?
Yeah.
I don't know that he would have. I think he would, if he would have liked that there's still children programming in the way that maybe with the times, maybe he would have been okay with that. But he would have a lot of things to say about how it is produced, how it is presented.
I kind of wonder, would he, because he was so accepting of like the gay thing and that, and would he be able to see the time changing in front of his face to be able to say, okay, maybe I'll let a little bit of that go get by. I won't be so harsh this time,
Oh, you mean like because he was like telling Clemens at the time, you're not going to come out on TV and I can't have you. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a good question. I got to imagine that he would continue to progress like he did.
Yeah.
That's at least what I'd like to remember and think.
Right.
But it's hard to know,
Right.
There are some prejudices that are hard to scratch away.
Yeah, I could see where he would progress with the times because his whole show was against kind of modern media at the time, I mean, like he talked about things that no other place talked about in a nice way to kids.
Right. All right. Finally, we've come to the end of our show where we want to talk about the ratings, the official Talkumentary rating, where each crew member scores the documentary on a scale of 1 to 10 items, 1 being as awful as Lady Elaine Fairchilde's awful red nose, and 10 being as good as Daniel Tiger's little fuzzy worn out heart. This week, we are using sweaters as our rating item. So I'll start since it was my pick today. I gave this 7 sweaters. I thought it was really, really good, better than some. It doesn't rate any higher than that for me because there really wasn't any, documentaries. I kind of am. I need a little more drama, I think, to rate it higher than that. Not because I didn't like this, not because I didn't like Fred Rogers, but 7. I'm sticking at 7 sweaters. Matt, how about you, sir?
I too gave it 7 sweaters.
Okay.
I think the message was great. I think they portrayed his message to be what he had intended it to be. I think the people that were in the documentary, that were involved in his life, helped portray the story that the documentary was trying to tell. And it was good.
Good. How about you, sir?
I also gave 7 myself. I think it was very clean. and very sincere by all the people that talked about Mr. Rogers, and the message got through. You know, even as an adult, I could see it. You know how good he was really. You know what he meant.
I just put that. We all rated 7s. And I just put it in my calculator to try to average out 7. Okay. So the official documentary rating for Won't You Be My Neighbor is 7 sweaters.
7 sweaters.
7 nice, comfy cardigan sweaters. Before we go, and before we talk about next week's episode, we're going to do a little something real quick. We're going to do another sort of similar to what we did when we did Stutz, a little bit of a gratefulness thing, but we're going to go around the room real quick. We're going to take a quick moment of Mr. Rogers' influence silence, and then we're going to name somebody that we are grateful for that helped us along the way, that really maybe lifted us up when we needed it, someone who comes to your mind. So once I give the motion, go ahead and name somebody, all right? So a little bit of silence here.
My mother, who always told me every little trick that she knew, and always told me that it doesn't matter for what someone else says. Just live your life right and do it right and be right towards everybody else, no matter what.
Thanks, James.
Yeah.
So me too. It was my mother. She told me that I could do anything that I wanted to when I grew up, and she supported no matter what I did. And to this day, even though I've made some mistakes, I've learned from them, and she's helped me through those things. And no matter what, she'll always tell me she loves me, and I always know she has my back.
Right.
Mm-hmm. You know, I could very easily say the same thing because my mom was a huge influence in my life. But just to switch it up a little bit, I think I will. It's not you, DJ. Don't worry about it.
Come on, dude.
You know, I think I'm going to say a tie with my 2 daughters, Autumn and Emily. From the time that I met them, they've been accepting of me. They've encouraged me in the things that I do. And yeah, that's mine.
That's cool.
Yep.
DJ, you're not getting out of this one. And you better say me.
I don't think it's you, though you have been very accepting of me my whole life.
That's true.
Except for when I was younger and...
Say
it. Was mean.
Yeah.
He was mean. Oh.
Was mean because, you know, I'm a little older than Jeff. And
I was mean?
No, I'm saying I was mean.
Let's go back to the quiet.
Because, you know, I was older than Jeff. And
yeah,
me and my friend across the street always picked on him.
Yep.
And my little brother.
That's funny. I experienced the same thing when I was growing up. My older brother, and his best friend, they always just used to pick on me too.
And now are you better friends than?
No, he moved away. Okay. I don't know where he is now.
Jeff and I are better friends than.
Yeah,
probably my younger brother and Jeff.
Well, y'all guys are all lucky because I just had sisters, and my older sister just beat me up every time she got a chest.
But so did my sister.
Yeah, but when I got older, I didn't beat her up, but I knew I could take her. But when I found out I could take her, I decided to love her.
All right, DJ, you're up.
I would say my wife, Andrea.
Mine too.
Oh, you're saying that because she's gonna listen.
No, she doesn't listen.
She would. You saying that she doesn't listen when you tell her something?
No. She won't listen to this.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to,
because I'm not on it usually, so she'd only listen to it if I was.
Well, I'm going to tell her you're on this one.
But yeah, she's always accepted me, even though I'm harsh on myself. That's why I married her.
Yeah.
Yep.
One of the reasons.
Yep. Well, thank you, friends. Puppets, trolleys, tigers, owls, kings, queens, for coming and hanging out with us this week and diving into yet another documentary. I hope that you all know that when I think about the people who helped me along the way, I actually do think of you all. Because deep down, no matter where you are, I know you want what's best for me. And let's face it, I'm pretty damn important too. So
That's right.
now
Yeah, no, you
let's
tell
talk
us
a
a lot.
little bit. What'd you say?
What?
Let's talk a little bit about next week's episode. Next week, the crew will be taking a step inside New Folsom Prison to look at the challenges of rehabilitation with a group of incarcerated men. We were watching an 87-minute documentary from 2017 called The Work. Have anyone seen The Work?
No.
No.
It's gonna be interesting though.
Any
Maybe-
predictions on that one?
I predict it's gonna be a lot of cussing,
A lot of fighting.
a lot of fights.
Yeah.
And then somebody's gonna have a reality mind opening.
I'm excited to get into that one. You know, besides me, next week is an entirely female crew. So I'm actually really glad that I got to talk with a group of guys together about the gentleness of manlyhood and what that can mean. And then I get to hang out with a group of ladies in an all-male prison and talk about rehabilitation. It's going to be actually kind of a fun juxtaposition, in my opinion. So
They need some Mr. Rogers up in that prison, it sounds like.
probably.
You're gonna have a lot of ladies talking about men in prison. I might have to interject on this one.
You don't get the right to do that.
Okay.
So
I'm just kidding.
everyone, please go out and check out the documentary The Work before next week's episode. It can be streamed on Canopy, which is a really cool streaming app. Just get yourself a library card. You can do that free online and get yourself a Canopy account and check it out. Join us next week as we work through some of our past sins and put in the work to make things right, one documentary at a time. Go out and rate and review our podcast on your favorite podcast streaming service and let us know what you think of our show. Come on, people, talk to us.
Yep.
Tell us how much you hate
Yep.
the documentary or how much you love it or what you think of James's buttery voice or anything like that. If you want to connect with our crew, look for @Talkumentary Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, or email us info.talkumentary@gmail.com. On behalf of DJ, King James, Matt, everyone else in this room that is not on these microphones, the entire Talkumentary family, I'm your host, Jeff Kolaski. I want to thank you all for listening. I hope you keep your minds open, be kind to one another, and won't you be my neighbor? Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening.